Thank you so much for being here. Happy Thursday. I hope you had a peaceful day. Um, yes, today, of course, we're going to discuss and go through the national news and global news. President Trump has returned back to Washington, D.C., and currently he is participating with the First Lady in gifting children candies for Halloween. So this was his, new duty upon arrival. But we're going to talk about his meeting with Xi Jinping. Was there? Yes, I wrote an article as early as 8 a.m. this morning. If you read it, we're going to discuss it. If not, I'll catch you up. Of course, the APEC summit is starting. It's actually just beginning. So it's important to point out that Trump and Xi Jinping met at the airport, and Xi arrived and Trump left. I know some of you called it romantic, but it's also very significant in a way where they've not been in a meeting with other leaders. And, there was no discussion with other countries either. So one was finished. All that Trump got at the APEC summit was a meeting. It's a luncheon with CEOs of some companies that are at least operating in Asia. And he met with Xi Jinping for an hour and 40 minutes. 1 hour, 40 minutes later, he, as China described it, escorted Xi Jinping to his limo. Xi left to the APEC summit, and Trump then flew off back to United States. And so Xi has a busy schedule for today. Well, the day already finished there. It's plus 13 hours if you compare it to our Eastern time. And then tomorrow will also be a busy day with meetings where he will be meeting with Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. This will be at 4 p.m. their local time, which is 5 a.m. our time. So if you're Canadian or you are following the news this drastically that you have to get everything in real time, like me, welcome to the club. I'm sure it's a very small club. This will be at 5 a.m. Eastern time. So this is just a bit of a preview. And then, of course, let's discuss everything. But before we begin, I'm a nerd. I'm a nerdy person. And yesterday I attended a meeting with the Prime Minister of Qatar. And I will talk about the details. And there's so many very interesting details that are deep off the record. So I'm not going to share it here. That's why we have the Zoom tomorrow. If you're not registered, please consider registering. If you are a Onest Plus member, please make sure to register so I have your email to send your Zoom invite. Invites have been sent out. So if you're a member and you have not received it, please comment so I can guide you further. Okay, so, and there, something very interesting came up where he said that our priorities are, first and foremost, the safety and well-being of our citizens. And if they talk about Qatar, as he refers to it, Qatar, not Qatar, whatever, however you call it. But main point is the citizens are priority. Of course, the state and the enrichment of their family. So because the leading royal family, and he's part of that family, is owning the banks and sovereign fund and financing all the initiatives within the state. But most importantly, they also care about the stability of the region. To which point he said, look, Iran is our adversary, but we are ensuring nothing happens with Iran because we're sitting literally on the same source of gas, right? If something goes there, this will affect us. So that's why they became the so-called mediators. Yes, they sponsor the Muslim Brotherhood. We talked about that too. But, and it was very interesting where he said, we do not politicize things like food, things like living cost, and which is very connected to the gas prices. So tonight I thought, let's check out what other gas prices, right? Because we know the prices are much higher in Qatar and Saudi Arabia as well, and those are adversaries too. But regardless, they also make more, they spend more. So what are the prices there? Because they're literally controlled by their government. And so this is what I'm finding. So Saudi Arabia, as of October 27, their price for gas was 62 cents, this is in dollars, per 1 liter, right? And if we think about it, I Googled it because I'm European. You have 3.79 liters in gallon, right? Because we get prices in gallons. So if you do 0.62 times 3.79, this is $2.34. This is the gas price in Saudi Arabia. Now, if you think about Qatar, then this is 56 cents. So you have 0.56 times 3.79. So you come out with $2.10. In those, states where the median income is $67,000 a year, they don't have anybody earning less than that. Oh, the lowest income. So you see, and that's kind of made me think about quality of life and how some things are politicized, some not, especially as we're discussing millions of people losing SNAPs, right? Losing their ability to provide food for their families beginning November 1st. Today is October 30th. And how politicized is our insurance, meaning health, right? And if you have any pre-existing condition, or you have diabetes or anything, you have to take pills daily, you will start taking less, you will start taking breaks with your medicine so you can stretch it, right? So this is becoming politicized. Then you have food is politicized, right? And then, of course, also employment becomes politicized too, because people who are furloughed, like it went viral where the guy who works for IRS, and he's a lawyer employed by the IRS in Washington, D.C., he is now running a hot dog stand because he has to make some money. So he's dressed, in a suit and stuff. And he's like, okay, if they call me, so I have to go to work, I'm ready. But here, I'm going to have, a hot dog stand. And this is just cruel on another level. Because we speak about democracy here and we're the biggest democracy. But if we think for a fact, so many essential things are politicized and has nothing to do, right? The contrary has nothing to do with socialism, because so many will say, okay, well, if you want food, if you want this, if you want that, then you're a socialist. No. The Trump administration is socialist. They're taking percentages from NVIDIA, from our steel companies and whatnot. This is definition of socialism. And I'm not talking about mayoral election in New York City. Leave that apart. Let's take the labels out. I'm talking about not politicizing the well-being of people. Because politicizing it, taking away food, taking away ability to get to work, taking away ability to be employed, and to take care of your health and the health of your loved ones, this is cruel on another level. And the contrary to that, right, the opposite of that is not socialism. Opposite of that is responsible governance. Just wanted to put it out there, but I'll share the details tomorrow. Aster, hi. Hello, Irene and everybody. Oh, Irene is here. Hi, Irene. Hello. And I got your things for tomorrow and the Zoom thing. Yes, I'll see you tomorrow. So excited. Who else is there? Hi, Agani. Welcome, fellow truth seekers. As far as I'm concerned, it's Mischief Night and Mischief Night. Yes. What's that? Oh, that's a cat in the box. Okay. Hi, Sean. Sean is here. Nerds rock. Yes, I agree. I do have glasses. I brought one pair of glasses. and I found old pair of glasses, and now I ordered red glasses by mistake. So anyway, you're gonna see me all kinds of crazy soon. So we pay $1.25 per liter on average here in Canada. Canadian dollars or US dollars, because that matters here, right? Because that's like what 75% of a dollar ish. So that, yeah, definitely less than what we pay in the United States. And that's why I kind of wanted to bring it up, right? How some things are essential and they're provided, and then we talk about politics, and then here we talk about essentials, right, to stay alive. But let's discuss some global news, local news. Let's get there. So first, what I want to speak about is Ukraine supporting US. And what happened yesterday at the United Nations, it was not discussed anywhere because mainstream media is very interested who shakes whose hand and how Trump is proclaiming he won here and he won there and he won everywhere. And so yesterday, our new ambassador, right, to UN, the guy who famously or infamously at this point leaked the information on Signal Chat about bombings of Iran and their nuclear reserves, Waltz with the T, not to confuse with Governor Waltz, who ran with Kamala Harris for, in his case, vice president. This Waltz, he is now our ambassador to UN. And in his first big speech, he talked about Cuba. And he talked about sanctioning Cuba because they're authoritarian regime, and same as Venezuela, and according again to him, Colombia and everybody, right? Because those are sanctioned already. So here's talking about sanctioning Cuba. And in this case, Ukraine starts playing this type of a game because they know Trump is meeting with Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is China that supports Russia heavily, right, in their fight against Ukraine. So they want to give this gesture. Same as China yesterday purchased 180,000 pounds of soybeans, right, as a gesture. So it's sort of like we have a good beginning of a meeting, right? Okay, so Ukraine obviously had an explanation behind it, right? First, I want to show you the vote. I do have a picture of the vote. I don't have? Well, I will upload it right now because I do have it. So the countries that supported U.S. resolution, let me find it because I definitely, oh, okay, I know where it is. Sometimes so many things. Okay, so I'm uploading it, and then you see the countries that supported U.S. resolution. Again, this was yesterday, so here it is. So you have here, against the U.S. proposed resolution against Cuba were 7. Absent were 12, in favor 163, right? And this was, let me put it because it's phrased backwards, right? So it's adding the economic, commercial, financial embargo imposed by the United States of America against Cuba, right? So this is what banning. Okay, let me see. So necessity of ending the economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed by United States of America against Cuba. So against it, right, this is US and the partners. And here's where Ukraine joined in, right? So against were Paraguay, North Macedonia, Ukraine, United States, obviously, Israel, Hungary, and Argentina. Hungary, Argentina explains itself, right? Israel, self-explanatory. North Macedonia, Paraguay, maybe they have currently negotiations with Ukraine, and United States and Ukraine, right? So, and the ambassador of Ukraine tied it together to the fact that the most mercenaries that are joining Russian forces in their fight against Ukraine at the front lines are in fact Cuban. And here's what he had to say. Take a look.
Our vote is against the inaction of Cuba's government in the face of recruitment of its citizens into Russia's military, which brings death and devastation to Ukraine. There is no secret that since 2022, to sustain its aggression, Russia has been actively recruiting foreign citizens to fight in its ongoing war against Ukraine. Among them, nationals of the Republic of Cuba constitute the largest group of mercenaries serving in the Russian army. I repeat, the largest group. Our defense forces have taken numerous Cuban nationals as prisoners of war fighting alongside Russian troops. At least several thousand Cuban citizens have signed contracts joining the ranks of soldiers directly engaged in combat operations on Ukrainian soil. This massive recruitment is not a matter of isolated Cuban individuals acting on their own. No, it's a systematic practice involving illicit networks that operate openly with the knowledge and, we must conclude, with tacit condemnation of the authorities in Havana.
Yeah. So essentially, then the foreign minister of Ukraine, Andriy Sybiha, he said that decision is linked to Cuban government's indifference to the mass recruitment of Cubans into the Russian army. It's not against the Cuban citizens. So Ukraine sort of extended this offer right before Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping. Okay. Also, President of France Macron warned that Russia is flooding Europe with fake social media accounts. And if you are in Europe, in fact, if you are in US or Canada, it doesn't matter, please pay attention, okay? Or anywhere in the world. He says that Russia is ramping up disinformation efforts across Europe. Quote, the biggest buyers of fake accounts on X, Twitter shitter, and elsewhere are the Russians who use them to destabilize European democracies, a formidable cocktail. So please be aware. Many times, people start fighting and then find out that this is a bot that is sort of debating something not important with them. So just, try not to engage now or ban them. Also, European representative, in fact, Kaja Kallas, she's vice president of European Commission. She said that it is not in China's interest for the war in Ukraine to end. And if you watched our deep dive last Friday into who is sponsoring Putin's operation against Ukraine with the Shadow Fleet, you see how much China is benefiting off of it. So she's absolutely right. And she says, she continues, as that would shift U.S. strategic focus to China. So she's adding also this factor that in case U.S. would be disinterested in this sort of monitoring and trying to solve in 24 hours or 24 years at this point, who cares? But if Trump becomes disinterested in the fight between Russia and Ukraine, or in fact Russia's fight against Ukraine and Ukraine's defense, then his attention would go to China. And this is not in Xi Jinping's interest. I beg to differ, and I explain how. I don't think, attention on China is not really in Xi Jinping's interest, but he's not fearing that at this point. But in fact, she says Japanese experts, however, note that the war is unpopular in China, the war between Russia and Ukraine, forcing Beijing to justify its support for Moscow as being in their national interest. So yeah, our Asian partners are asking, they start having questions, why is China supporting this? Now, President of Russia, Putin, meanwhile, reportedly proposed a temporary suspension of military operations in Kupiansk and Pokrovsk. And he lies, right? He flips everything 180. So whenever you hear him or watch him, just stand on your head, because then it starts making more sense. And he explained it like, we're winning so much. We want to stop the operations, to invite independent journalists, whoever that is, in his mind, to document how far we come and how we're winning this war, whatever. So that was his explanation for stopping operations there. Now, obviously, if he wants to stop the operations, he can start talking to at least Trump and, have a ceasefire, even if it is temporary. And proclaiming that he's winning and he wants foreign journalists to come in and document something, that's bogus. Meanwhile, Russia also tested a Poseidon nuclear super torpedo. Now, it can carry nukes, right? Or it has nuclear capability. But they were not testing nukes at this point. Putin announced that Russia has successfully tested its Poseidon nuclear-powered super torpedo, which military analysts say it's capable of devastating coastal regions by triggering massive radioactive ocean swells. They did not test the nuclear ability here, but I want to remind you, remember about what is it, half a year ago at this point, we had a lot of, no, it's about a year ago already. We had earthquakes near Siberia. And it was one earthquake. In fact, I remember because I was, sorry for details, at the bathroom at the United Nations headquarters at that point, and that's where the the whole thing happened. There was one earthquake, and then it was followed by different sort of like aftershocks for days. And then some reports came out that probably Russia is testing something in that particular region, because it was just illogical that so many aftershocks came through, aftershocks that were increasing in their impact rather than decreasing, which would be a normal thing. And then, of course, there's also USSR plans to, as old as time, to put nuclear nukes essentially between the plates. And right, if we talk about the seismic, right, and then cause some type of situation there. So this time they didn't do it. They just tested the whole system, but it was not it didn't have nukes in it. Right. Which then obviously led to Trump tweeting minutes before meeting with Xi Jinping. We are not discussing his meeting yet, but I want to show this tweet. He put out this tweet. No, this is South Korea tweet. Where is his other tweet? No. Anyway, he put out the tweet that everybody's testing nukes, and I have advised our Pentagon, Department of Defense or War, as they call it these days, to start testing our nuclear capability because we have the most nukes. Russia has less than us, and third is China. And so we have so many of them that we can start testing them. So essentially advancing giving it to Hackseth, or some of you pointed out it would be Secretary of Energy. Regardless, he is advising to or directing them to start testing our nuclear weapons imminently, as he said. And this again was tweeted minutes before meeting Xi Jinping. Obviously, Trump tried to put some leverage, to the talks and start with that and sort of like throw Xi Jinping off his balance. So he would start advancing and asking about this. Later, reportedly from my sources, Trump tried to talk about that with Xi Jinping, and she said, if you start testing nuclear weapons, you have to inform your partners and everybody around the world. Do you have plans to discuss with me so I can adjust accordingly, and all our allies, whatever, or countries with nuclear capabilities can adjust accordingly so it goes safely? Or all you have is that tweet? If all you have is the tweet, then we have nothing to discuss, because I'm not here to discuss your social media presence. So then there was a parliamentary election in Netherlands yesterday. So quickly on that, in Netherlands, Liberal Party overtook the far-right Party for Freedom, the PVV, in snap parliamentary elections. PVV leader Geert Wilders, who has opposed aid to Ukraine, lost nearly a third of his seats, according to exit polls. But then today it was discussed that they still will have to build a coalition, and they're sort of like even. So let's see what this will be. But the leader of the Liberal Party is 38 years old. We're sharing the same birth year with him, and he's openly gay. And so from what I've seen, if I'm wrong, please correct me. I would love to be correct here, as anywhere. And he's very upbeat and fresh, to leadership on such level. And he's former, I think, climate minister or something on that regard. But he worked in parliament, but he's young in that regard. So hi, Steven. Steven says, we've seen that for years, the fake bot account, so annoying. Yes. Drifter, hi, Drifter, which is bullshit. What is bullshit? Please explain, because a lot of it is bullshit. Now, obviously, before meeting with Xi Jinping, Trump was at APEC, and he met with the CEOs. It was a luncheon. I covered it last night, so I'm not going to repeat it. But there he said, it's tremendous honor. I will tell you, driving up in the Beast, that's called the Beast. That's his limo. Driving up in the Beast, the limo was a very powerful, people carrying very vicious looking weapons. It was something. It was some spectacle and some beautiful scene. Okay. Now, there was a US and South Korea trade deal framework. Let's talk about that. The US and South Korea have reached a tentative framework agreement, creating a multi-billion-dollar investment fund, resolving a major striking point in recent negotiations. And that's the tweet that I mistakenly showed yesterday. Trump put out that South Korea has agreed to pay US $350 billion for lowering the tariff charged against them by the United States. Additionally, they have agreed to buy oil and gas in vast quantities, and investment into our country by wealthy South Korean companies and businessmen with who will exceed $600 billion. Our military alliance is stronger than ever before. I have given them approval to build nuclear-powered submarine rather than the old-fashioned and far less nimble diesel-powered submarines that they have now. A great trip with great prime minister. Then it came out that people who actually worked in Pennsylvania that's supposed to build, well, according to him, supposed to build this nuclear submarine said that we don't have the capability to do it, so what are you talking about? Now, while Washington initially, there's the real deal, initially demanded $350 billion upfront payment, South Korea managed to negotiate it down to this being paid within the next decade or longer, and only according to approval by their internal government. Only if it is in their interest and they have the ability and it's not hurting their internal and external operations. So they sort of have this plan now. And the review mechanism that is implanted in this plan is to safeguard the economy of South Korea and currency stability. So we will pay you, we may pay you, only if it works on our end, and this will be in the next 10 plus years. Under this deal, US auto tariffs on Korean vehicles have been reduced by 15%, aligning Korean automakers with Japanese and European competitors. So the Techo King is going back without, he didn't get anything in return. He got a headline in return that he tweeted and lowered tariffs for it. Semiconductor tariffs, however, remain vague and tied to Taiwan's future deal. So he said, since you're also producing semiconductors and Taiwan does, so will be same deal for you both. But he didn't start negotiations with Taiwan yet. So South Korea is sort of in limbo and kind of waiting, because you're going to get what Taiwan will get, but we don't even know what Taiwan will get. Because Trump is not willing to sit down with Taiwan, because Taiwan will tie it together to security assistance and some type of, something, at least something in writing that Taiwan can hope for, right, defensively, if China were to start invading it. So Trump is not sitting down with Taiwan, nor China would actually allow him to do so, or even Russia. Now, despite frustration in Seoul over moving from 0 auto tariffs to 15% within just 6 months because of this Trump-induced trade war, officials emphasize pragmatic approach to minimize disruption. The deal must still be approved by Korea's National Assembly with details to follow. So this whole thing with paying $350 billion only if and when and within 10 plus years, this still has to be approved by their Korea's National Assembly. So whatever Trump is tweeting is not realistic. Now let's talk about Trump and Xi Jinping meeting in Korea. First of all, as I mentioned, they met at the airport. Xi Jinping arrived, Trump left, and in the middle they met. Obviously, this led to some very awkward handshakes. I do have a video of it. Take a look.
Mr. President, the President of the People's Republic of China.
Good to meet you. Great pleasure to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Behind me? Me too.
And we're going to have a very successful meeting, I have no doubt. But he's a very tough negotiator. That's not good. We know each other well. Mr. President, do you plan to sign a trade deal today?
Could be. I think we have.
If you ever met your ex and had to talk to them nicely in public, you probably share Xi Jinping's feeling. But no, they were not supposed to sign anything. In fact, Secretary Bessent said that they're not capable of signing anything until January. They need that time for whatever reason. And Trump at that point, and I did cover that briefing, where Trump said, no, we're hoping to sign the TikTok deal because Xi Jinping, according to Trump, has approved it. Right? And again, China would be still controlling the algorithm, but some of the data will be still based in America. And the leadership would sort of, the ownership percentages would change, but it's not really leaving China in that regard. And Trump brought it up in the meeting yesterday, our time yesterday, well, everybody's time yesterday at this point. And Xi Jinping didn't want to sign it, nor he wanted to discuss TikTok. What he was really willing to discuss was actually Russia-Ukraine situation. But first, let's review who was at the meeting. So, on Trump's end, it was Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, Rubio, Secretary of State, Bessent, Treasury Secretary, Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, Jeffrey Greer, U.S. Trade Representative, David Perdue, who is U.S. Ambassador to China. Now, from Xi Jinping's part, Chai Si, Director of General Office of the CCP Central Committee, considered Xi Jinping's de facto Chief of Staff. Wang Yi, Minister of Foreign Affairs, with whom Rubio has met many times. Haley Feng, Vice Premier and Lead Negotiator on Economic and Trade Matters. Zheng Shanji, Chairman of National Development and Reform Commission. Ma Jiaoxu, Executive Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs. And Wang Wentao, Minister of Commerce. Notably, Li Chenggang, who is China's longtime international trade representative, who is a veteran to specifically meeting with Bessent and having all these negotiations, was not invited to the meeting, which signaled that Xi Jinping wants to he wants to control the narrative. So this meeting would be tightly controlled without anybody speaking who has ever had any negotiations one-on-one with Americans. So she had formal tone. Trump started, they had this introductory, opening statements. Trump called Xi Jinping more than friend. He knows him so much and he loves his own country and all that kind of stuff. She was reading off of a page, and you have to read between the lines here. So because that's the only thing we got from him specifically on that meeting. So, quote, "It's normal for the two leading economies of the world to have frictions now and then. In the face of winds, waves, and challenges, we should stay the right course, navigate through the complex landscape, and ensure the steady sailing forward of the giant ship of China-US relations." So it's like, okay, it's okay, so we don't see eye to eye, but it doesn't mean trade war. He added, "China's development and revitalization goes hand in hand with Trump's Make America Great Again." And here everybody saw this as sort of a big compliment. Now, see it for the fact. Make America Great Again means overcharging your importers, killing your farmers, at this point, metaphorically, thankfully, killing your economy, raising prices for your own people. And if we want to purchase still from China, which we have to because we're so dependent, we're overpaying for it. So yeah, it works with Chinese economy. Also, they make a buck supporting Russia, and Trump has not touched it. And it's almost 1 year after he became the president of the United States again. So obviously, all of this Make America Great Again label, don't take it word for word. Take it for the label that it represents. All this, shit show obviously works in favor of Chinese development, as he called it. He says, Our two countries are fully able to help each other succeed and prosper together. China and the US can jointly shoulder our responsibility as major countries and work together to accomplish more great and concrete things for the good of our two countries and the whole world. So, the meeting lasted 1 hour 40 minutes. After that, Trump escorted him to his limo, which led to all kinds of pictures that are very, well, not benefiting Trump's image. Let's put it this way. And to compare, she then, of course, traveled to attend the APEC summit and had to headline the summit. Look at his behavior here. It's very different image there. And obviously they had this fans lined up on the streets and, welcoming him with the parade and all that kind of stuff. Also, who's there, as you see here, Prime Minister Carney. He did the same meeting that President Biden did through his 4 years in office. This is the IP4, so-called. But instead of United States, you have Canada here. This is, of course, you see Albanese, that's Australia. You see Singapore, New Zealand, right? And this time you see here Canada. Now, and that is interesting. Obviously, this is prime minister's level, but Biden was meeting with all. This is the coalition that Biden put together, not to make them purchase more military aid, which again was the result of it, but essentially to have partnership and security in the Indo-Pacific, which then paused China's aggression toward Taiwan. And so in that regard, this is very important that they are on board. Right. And perhaps I didn't mention South Korea is there, right? IP4. So Carney met with them. Carney's intention is very simple, and he puts it in every single statement. And I promised our Canadian friends to put it all in one article, which I'm working on. I'm getting all the readouts from the Prime Minister's office from Ottawa, and I'm putting everything in one because it's so much. And he met with everybody single-handedly. He met with everybody together. He met with Malaysia and Singapore and Cambodia and others at the ASEAN or Asia, whatever meeting, ASEAN, right? The one that was in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. And now then he traveled to Singapore. He met with Prime Minister there. And now at APAC, he's meeting with the rest. And his idea is to have free trade agreement with the countries that are part of ASEAN or Asian and countries that are of APEC. He seeks free trade agreements with them. There's also partially already free trade in some sectors with, for instance, Singapore, but he wants to have more. He wants to create more jobs and do it in a sort of a win-win scenario. His method, from what I see and the readouts that I get, is presenting advantages to your counterpart and presenting them an offer that is beneficial to them without explaining why you are benefiting from it. And if you ever read How to Make Friends and Win with People or whatever Carnegie book from the 60s, that's exactly what it teaches you. So yeah, smart in that regard. And he's meeting with Xi Jinping. It's reported by the Chinese state media that Canada is hinting on dropping the 100% tariff on the EVs, which obviously will screw Tesla, but will be benefiting those who want to buy, of course, electric vehicles in Canada, making them cost about $10,000. In return, China would be dropping their tariff on pork and canola oil. And we'll see, again, what they will be announcing. But he is hinting on having something in writing. And again, I will report on everything. And I'll put all the statements beforehand now. And then coverage will be separate. Let's check your comments for real quick. We need the poo. Yeah. Letter of understanding are not deals, right? Excuse me, it's pronounced Nutlik. Oh, I don't want to hint to Lutnik that I have ideas. No. Okay, so then the meeting happened and Trump had his Air Force One gaggle. His plane did stop at in Alaska. to refuel for some reason. Usually they don't really need it. The flight is 13 hours, but okay, he did stop near Anchorage and at the U.S. Air Force Base, obviously, and then he flew and landed in D.C. So he was speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, where he said, on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the highest or the best, I would say the meeting was 12. Then he said, Taiwan issue never came up. Well, your job was to raise the Taiwan issue. Do you think she will raise the Taiwan issue? On nuclear testing, Trump was cryptic. He said it had to do with others. They all seem to be nuclear testing. It will be announced. We have testing sites. If they're going to test, we have to test. I think he misunderstood what Russia did. Russia today spoke all day, every day, that we just tested the system. We did not test the nukes, but we can test the nukes if you test the nukes. So who's first going to blow us all up type of story. Trump floated a possible trilateral discussion with Russia and China. Denuclearization would be a tremendous thing, and it's something we're actually talking to Russia about, and China would be added to that if we were to do something. Well, remark came, obviously, days after Russia conducted 2 high-profile nuclear-capable weapons tests, Burevestnik, nuclear-powered cruise missile, on October 21st, and this Poseidon, that I mentioned earlier, underwater drone, on October 29, both confirmed by Moscow. So, kind of doesn't look like Russia is very interested in denuclearization, because you will take away their only argument to continue the war against sovereign Ukraine, and to ensure that the European partners are not doing anything because they're afraid of that nuclear capability. So do you think Russia will drop the nukes? Like their deal will denuclearize? Like, come on. On tariffs and fentanyl and this deal, Trump claimed his administration had cut tariffs on Chinese goods from 57 to 47%. Meanwhile, he forgot that he already added 100 extra percent. So he said he dropped the tariffs by 10%, but in fact it's 110. But who cares at this point? Taco Tuesday every day. Quote, we agreed he's talking about Xi Jinping. He was going to work very hard to stop the flow of fentanyl. I put 20% tariff on China because of fentanyl. Based on his statements today, I reduced it by 10% effective immediately. And here, I don't know if you read the book Little Prince, where Little Prince is traveling to different planets, my favorite book. My roommate in college stole it. May she have a good life. But there was one planet when the planet had one person, a king, and he sat on his throne. And he demanded the sun to go down and to go up. Obviously, he was monitoring sunset and, sunrise. And so right at the time when sun was rising, he's like, rise, fall, go down, sunset, all that. That just reminds me on that. Because, you're causing something. You're not responsible, allegedly, for the results. Everybody's pretending like it's okay. You can kill people just like in the sea, claiming there's somebody you didn't like. No investigation. If they survive, they're not even coming to US for any type of investigation or prosecution. You can raise tariffs. Yes, the Senate today, voted against Trump raising tariffs. And then the House said, oh, we're not going to vote on that. And then, yes, you also have Trump who can veto all of this. So same old, same old. You just life without consequences. But the consequences are on us. They're not on him because he's in power right now, although we know how authoritarian leaders usually end. But regardless, we are paying for consequences right now. Our insurance is going to go up. Obamacare insurance is going to go up by 30% starting January. We are paying the prices. We're paying, in fact, literally higher prices for it. But on his level, he is misinformed. He reminds me on the situation when Lenin was presented fake newspapers, if you ever read on history of Russia in that case. He was presented, they printed fake newspapers every day. So he would read fake news. because newspapers were the news. And that's how he governed, and he was ultimately ousted. So that's where we are. Does he actually know what's happening? Then he announced a deal. And here I want you to pay attention, because he's contradicting himself 3 times in one sentence. So he says, quote, "We have a deal. Every year, we'll renegotiate the deal. The deal will go on for a long time, long beyond the year." Okay. They don't have a deal, so let's not even dive into that. He boasted tremendous amounts of soybeans that were now suddenly purchased by Xi Jinping, and he's great, and he's restarting soybean trade. Yay! No, what he did, it's not a deal. It was a one-time gesture that openly Secretary Bessent confirmed and the Chinese confirmed. We purchased 180,000 pounds of beans for $72 million. Meanwhile, under Biden in 2024, China purchased in soybeans purchases alone $12 billion worth of soybeans. This is a $72 million gesture. Same as Ukraine voted for your Cuba story. It's a gesture. So, now, Trump also noted that no new Chinese investments in the US will be coming. They didn't even discuss it. China said, we do have already investments. We will continue with what we already have. And then Trump says Ukraine came up very strongly, to which a reporter, thank you for having brain, said, did you talk about Russia selling oil to China and China purchasing it? Trump said, quote, the oil, he's been buying oil from Russia for a long time. Why oil? You were there to talk about your trade war that you orchestrated and are paying for now, because you're lying about the economy 101 on who is paying tariffs type of story. You were there to talk about Taiwan, if you still have responsibilities as the leader of the free world, or whatever we call it these days. You had the point to bring up oil. Yes, oil. Because that's how China is sponsoring Russia's operation, so to speak, murder in Ukraine. And the Shadow Fleet. And the stolen goods from farmers in Ukraine, right? That Russia is changing labels, changing everything, and relabeling, so to speak, and selling all around the world. This is also stolen, right? From Ukraine as well. 20% of their whatever they sell is stolen. So, and you didn't bring up anything. So, on energy and Alaska. Now, this one is a biggie. And this one has roots. And the roots started in Anchorage, Alaska. Almost said Canada. In Anchorage, when Trump rolled out the red carpet treatment for Putin. Afterwards, we had all this comical situation there, but then Kremlin put out a statement that they did discuss, and in fact, Trump brought up this idea of collaboration, a threesome collaboration in Alaska, which would be then officiated obviously by United States. They would be building the road, which they already started building at this point. Forget those preservation lands, right, that care about the environment. What environment? We're drill baby drill story here. So they put the road, they start drilling, and this drilling operation will be a triple trouble, because Trump would invite Xi Jinping and China. He will invite Putin and Russia to join in this wonderful adventure. In a lengthy Truth Social post after his meeting with Xi Jinping, Trump posted and claimed that Xi had agreed to consider purchasing American energy, including potential deal in Alaska. Quote, a very large-scale transaction may take place concerning the purchase of oil and gas from the great state of Alaska. Chris Wright, Doug Burgum, and our respective energy teams will be meeting to see if such an energy deal can be worked out. The proposal, obviously tying Chinese purchases to U.S. energy resources in Alaska, likely raised eyebrows in Ottawa. Why? because any large-scale energy arrangement in the region inevitably intersects with shared Arctic routes, and continental infrastructure involving Canada. Because yes, you will be shipping that oil, right? Through what? Canadian waters. So, in this regard, please pay attention. Next, Trump will, obviously, he orchestrated this fight with Carney, so Carney wouldn't be meeting with anybody in that regard. That, oh, we're not dealing with, he's talked about Reagan aid. And by the way, that Reagan aid is on tariffs is manufactured. It's AI. It's all fake news, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But, deleted this anyway. But I posted it earlier on July, I think 24th of this year. Chinese government, the spokesperson of Xi Jinping, posted the same video of Reagan talking about tariffs to prove the point how counterproductive this whole idea of trade war is. And Trump didn't make a peep on that. I posted it across the socials. I do have a screenshot, so I didn't upload it here. But anywho, so did essentially this whole story with, oh, we're not talking to Canada at all, this was a precursor to this. And the next story will be Trump announcing that Canada is no longer considered partner of the Golden Dome. Mark my words. But if you have a brain and if you have a map, or maybe you did study geography and you kind of know how North America looks like, you understand that the Golden Dome project, that is, by the way, ironically designed to protect United States, and if Canada is part of it, Canada, from China and Russia, this Golden Dome idea is not feasible without Canadian presence in it. Because how are you going to put the dome? How are you going to hide North America without being, in Canadian airspace? Right? The Golden Dome is not the Golden Dome. It's a part of defense systems, right? So, next thing, he's going to start this notion, Canada is not part of Golden Dome. Mark my words. Because he doesn't want Canadian input in this project right here. And Canada has to have an input. And I hope Ottawa is preparing to have a word with Trump and Xi, and hopefully Mark Carney is raising it tomorrow, because either they have to be part of the deal or they have to have a veto power, because that is really invading Canadian national security operations. I mean, questioning them at least. Now, so it also lands uncomfortably close to something Moscow has already hinted, as I mentioned. They said that in Anchorage, they talked about a three-way operation in Alaska, and now, essentially Trump did confirm it. So are we talking about protecting America from our adversaries, which we thought are China and Russia, or are we talking about partnering with them? In a very key point, right? Because that Air Force base and where Trump and Putin met in Alaska, that specific one was created actually to intercept Russian aggression, if it were to come to that. Now, she left the meeting with no public statement. Taiwan was not mentioned. Russia's war in Ukraine was discussed only in generalities, and China's growing role in supplying and financing Moscow went unchallenged. Trump asked, would you mind stopping buying oil from Russia? And she said, no, I will mind it. I will keep doing what I'm doing. Trump, meanwhile, praised Xi's engagement as strong and constructive, telling reporters, quote, we're both going to work together to see if we can get something done. And the key word in this sentence, of course, is if. Now, Wendy Cutler, Senior Vice President of Asia Society Policy Institute and former U.S. Deputy Trade Negotiator, said the long-awaited Trump-Xi meeting was an important step in stabilizing our bilateral relationship by turning down the temperature on recent actions by both countries. However, the announced outcomes do little to resolve underlying structured issues, including excess capacity, excessive subsidies, and unfair trade practices. As such, this truce may be short-lived. She noted that Beijing drove a hard bargain, insisting on getting paid for every concession it made. Rory Daniels, same organization but managing director, added Presidents Trump and Xi succeeded in stemming the active bleeding in the relationship, but whether the bandage will stick remains to be seen. Continuous negotiations will be a feature of U.S.-China relations moving forward, with all the associated market and political volatility we have seen over the last 6 months. He also added discomfort may set in over time about why it didn't come up in terms of Taiwan, why their issue didn't come up, and what its absence in Beijing's agenda means for China's Taiwan policy in the long term. Now, following this meeting, the Chinese embassy in Washington issued a statement on the meeting. It's very short, very vague. Quote, "The two presidents agreed to enhance cooperation in economic, trade, energy, and other fields, and to encourage more people-to-people exchanges. The two presidents agreed to maintain interactions on a regular basis. President Trump looked forward to visiting China early next year and invited President Xi to visit the United States." Statement underscores Beijing's preference by controlled optimism and continuity, steering clear of any mention of tariffs, fentanyl, or the underlying disputes that defined the talks. And here's something that Trump should have raised. Support for Russia, yes, and shadow fleet operations. China calling itself near Arctic state, sole-handedly just pronouncing itself. Why? Because they want to use the trade routes. What's their plan here? Instead of collaborating with them and buying American gas. Now, or energy resources. He should have raised Taiwan issue, obviously. He should have raised the minerals issue, because they're putting embargoes and they're putting all types of limits on sale. And Xi Jinping just sole-handedly is, advising on what shall be sold to whom and when, and in what amounts. And chips, the new ruling by Beijing that any chips that were made using China's resources, minerals, or China's concept, right, ways of producing chips. In other words, whether they're produced in Taiwan or South Korea, that sale specifically to the United States has to be approved personally by Xi Jinping. Did he raise it? So optics over outcomes. So essentially, Trump celebrated the meeting as 12 out of 10, yet by a very measurable standard, results are very modest. Tariff cut without reciprocity, small symbolic farm goods purchase, no commitments on Taiwan, Ukraine, or Russia, a vague annual concept of a deal without enforcement, and handshake that signaled imbalance rather than trust. Now, Xi obviously is dominating the headlines in China or Asia and altogether Europe as well. At the APEC summit, he said, the era of economic globalization, what is needed is not in the era of economic globalization, what is needed is not gaps of division, but bridges of communication, not iron curtains or confrontation, but highways of cooperation. And this is just for me, I've written it so many times. Leadership is not failing through confrontation. Real leadership, which we thought United States has as the biggest democracy in the world, this dies in complacency, performance, and illusions of victory. And that is exactly what we ended up with. Complacency, illusion of victory, and performance. When you go to watch Lion King on Broadway, do you think those are lions? Next time you see Trump negotiating, think about that. It's a performance. And we pay for it. We pay to be entertained. Infamous quote, right? Aren't you entertained? Yeah, we kind of are. Very entertained. Here's quote of the day that Trump presented aboard of Air Force One when he talked. And it is on Ukraine. This is his new plan on Ukraine. Take a look.
Work together to see if we can get something done. We agreed the the sides are, locked in and fighting, and sometimes you have to let them fight, I guess. Crazy. But he's going to help us, and we're going to work together on Ukraine. There's not a lot more we can do. The oil, he's been buying oil from Russia for a long time. It takes care of a big part of China. And, I can say India's been very good on that front. But we didn't really discuss the oil. We discussed working together to see if we could get that war finished. It doesn't affect China. It doesn't affect us. And I'd like to see it done on the basis. I don't like to see 6, 7, 8,000 young people, mostly young people, for the most part soldiers, be killed. It's not costing us anything. In fact, we make money, and I don't even want to talk about making money. I don't care about making money in that case. But, we send weapons to NATO. They buy full price. They buy the weapons. They give them to whoever, but I think they give them probably to Ukraine for the most part. And we discussed it. We discussed all that. We're going to work together to try and get the war with Russia and Ukraine solved.
What about Taiwan?
It doesn't touch us. It doesn't touch China. China is profiting off of it. You're now, I guess, profiting off of it because you make sure everybody buys weapons from you. So you both are now profiting off of war in Ukraine. Right? Meanwhile, I mentioned that Trump is in the White House, and currently he is welcoming everybody, right, to get the presents. And there's also Stephen Miller and Katie Miller, his wife, and they came in to get the presents from Trump. Here's just now from the White House.
Let's go.
So Stephen Miller's wife was on Piers Morgan's show, which went viral in Europe. Perhaps you haven't seen it here, but she imploded when she was confronted about her being a snowflake, so to speak. I will share the video with you so you can build your own opinion. Take a look.
Totally lying. It's very normal for a Miller to be completely and utterly lying.
Quite frankly, I'm really sick and tired of this racist, bigoted rhetoric that comes from people like you against my husband, against my family, and my children. I am raising Jewish children in this country.
Who brought your
in which
children
you
into this? What a weirdo.
Piers, I'm going to be done with this if you're going to allow racist and bigoted attacks against one of your commentators just for the sake that he will not
hang on.
speaking.
Casey, to be clear, Casey, to be clear,
he inserted a line that says the Miller's lie. Is that not coded language for therefore we are Jewish? Come on, Piers, where are you?
What?
Where are you standing?
God, you're so
Katie,
pathetic.
if I can speak,
everything's your
if I can speak,
anti-Semite. Fire him, cancel him, cancel him, America. Oh my God, Israel's feelings have been hurt. Why don't you work for this country?
Can we try and get
this country?
Yeah, you are a guest on my show, and I appreciate you coming on the show, and I like you coming on the show.
And I'm saying the two other guests on your show are welcome to participate in these anti-Semitic attacks that is so permeating on CNN and MSNBC.
This is so ridiculous. I'm sorry. I have to jump in here. Somebody criticizing you personally is not an anti-Semitic attack. If somebody says that you are lying, that is not an attack on Jews. That is an attack on you. And just stop hiding behind identity. This is all the snowflake behavior that the right is supposedly criticizing the left for, that you're simply repeating here. Yes, Stephen Miller is a destructive force in American society. That is not an attack on Jews. That is no reference to his identity. This is an attack on him individually, and just deal with the merits of this case.
But she went further, and she demanded for those that spoke against her to be denaturalized, which follows, all of this is followed with this tweet. Schenk is saying, I hope I don't get deported for winning the debate. If Princess Snowflake is going to enter the arena, she has to understand there is no crying to mommy. If she asks her husband to deport everyone she loses a debate to, we're going to start running out of people. But she is starting this whole notion checking, and she finished this debate with the words, "I hope you filled out everything correctly on your naturalization request." And how did she know that he wasn't born there, but here in the US? But because we will take a look at it again. Now, which leads me to awkward statements of the day. Here's RFK Jr. on Tylenol and autism. Remember, they're demanding the taxes are suing essentially the producer of Tylenol to put that thing that don't take Tylenol, the statement that it kills, or makes your kids autistic and all that kind of stuff. But meanwhile, RFK Jr. says the causative association between Tylenol given in pregnancy in the prenatal periods is not sufficient to say it definitely causes autism, but it is very suggestive. Trump on North Korea. Reporters ask him on Air Force One, "Sir, what's your reaction to North Korea test launching a missile this morning?" Trump says, "I don't know. He's been launching missiles for decades, right? We had a very good relationship. I mean, more than relationship." Okay, I don't know what you had at this point. I'm not really interested. He also said on Obamacare, it never worked. It never will work. It's never not going to be good. I think it's a great time for Republicans and Democrats to get together and make something that will work and let the insurance companies make money. They're entitled to that, but not that kind of money that they're making. Also, J.D. Vance proclaimed that essentially they're healing the system. Obamacare never worked, so he needs to heal the system. And so all of that is essentially on purpose. Let's check some comments here. And I think I'm lagging, so I need to restart myself. Katie is such a pathetic victim. Dreamliner. Yes. Hello, Dreamliner. I still don't understand Trump's tweet saying he will allow South Korea to build submarines. He wants Americans to build nuclear submarines for South Korea, and he is demanding $5 billion investment for it. But he promised for that to be built in Pennsylvania. And somebody who did run the factory that was building, ships said that we're not capable of building anything at the moment. This is not, feasible, whatever he is promising. So he's just making money. That's all. Everything for sale. I think I need to restart myself. Let's see if I can put some video while I do that. What do I have here? What do I have? Okay, here's Trump speaking. I don't know about what, but on Air Force One. And meanwhile, I will be rebooting myself for just 40 seconds.
Regarding Antifa, what you posted. NPR, sir. Regarding
Are they still here?
We are?
Are they still here? Oh, good. Congratulations.
Yeah. Regarding designating them a terrorist organization, when they don't have defined leadership or membership, how do you target them?
Who does it?
Antifa.
We're going to find out, right? We're going to see. People have been talking about it for a long time. We're going to see. Did they have anything to do with your network? Okay. Well, we're going to find.
Do they have anything to do with NPR? Like, oh my God. Which leads a good opening to national news. So U.S. is to resume nuclear testing, as I mentioned. This has been suspended since 1992. Also, Federal Reserve issued a second rate cut this year, citing labor market concerns amid government shutdown. Without renewed subsidies, also prices for Obamacare premiums could increase by 30% for a typical plan. The Trump administration claimed to have killed 4 people on suspected drug trafficking boats in the Pacific. This is their so-called anti-drug operations. This is just literally killing people. DOJ fallout. The 2 federal prosecutors were placed on leave after describing January 6 rioters as mob or rioters. And so now they had to leave. Also, Republican-led Senate passed a bill to repeal Trump's tariffs on Canada, following similar move on Brazil earlier this week. And also today, same story on just removing the ability of Trump to impose tariffs. Now, the House has declined to act, signaling division within the GOP over Trump's trade policies, and Trump also can veto it. So, National Guard confusion amid shutdown. Most National Guard units have postponed drills, though some states continue creating uneven readiness. The Pentagon ordered new quick reaction units in all states by January to respond to domestic unrest. So he's creating his own army, but his own shutdown is lingering all this. Now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth plans a major reform of U.S. arms sales, aiming to streamline support to allies and replenish stockpiles. Also, in some business news, GM lays off 1,700 workers in Michigan and Ohio, citing slow EV sales. Congratulations to Canada dropping tariff on, which they hope, well, presumably will do in a couple of hours. So that will hurt America even more. Boeing delays 777 or 777X launch, incurring nearly $5 billion in costs. Chipotle cuts its outlook again, blaming economic strain on young consumers. And Grammarly rebrands as Superhuman and adds an AI assistant. I guess if you can spell, you are a superhuman these days. So, global news, Prince Andrew, disgraced Prince Andrew, now has been fully stripped of all royal titles and evicted from Windsor Mansion, Buckingham Place mentioned. And do I have it? Yeah, anyway. So here's a readout. It says His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, and honors of Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. His lease on Royal Lodge has to date provided him with legal protection to continue in residence. Formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease, and he will move to alternative private accommodation. These censures are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. And here's a very important paragraph. Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse. So, another big news that we started covering last night, and it's continuing. So, United States will reduce its military presence in Eastern Europe. First, they started with Romania. Now, this is everybody. According to U.S. and Romanian officials, NATO allies have sought to bolster defenses against Russian aggression since 2022, but Washington now plans a gradual drawdown, citing resource reallocation and readiness realignment. And they say, well, this is because Europe is so ready to defend itself. Why do we need to be there? Well, you see how Europe is ready to defend itself. Meanwhile, NORAD, that's supposed to defend the Arctic, right? NORAD has deployed 2 F-35s, 2 F-16s, and 3 KC-135s refueling aircraft to Pituffik Space Force Base in Greenland, practicing a dynamic operational exercise, testing the alliance's ability to rapidly deploy and operate in Arctic conditions. Are you going to protect or invade? Can you please specify? Meanwhile, remember those sanctions that I mentioned that are not even sanctions yet. There is a wind down period for those sanctions to even occur, come into force starting November 21st for U.S. assets and November 28th for UK assets. And of course, I'm talking about Lukoil and Rosneft, right? The biggest oil companies in Russia. I mentioned that Russian sovereign fund is buying out those shares. There's also other players that are buying those shares. I will share the details tomorrow on Zoom. I physically can't share online because of some things. Now, but what came out already, Russian energy company Lukoil announced a deal to sell its foreign holdings to Gunvor, a commodities firm founded by Gennady Timchenko, a close ally of Putin, and Swedish billionaire Torbjörn Törnqvist. The company cited U.S. sanctions imposed on October 22nd as the reason for divestment. But there are other big players that, again, we'll talk about tomorrow that are behind it. And how do I know? I know it from those players itself. So So this will be 6 p.m. tomorrow on Zoom. That's where you're going to dive deeper into that. Now, humanitarian and regional updates. 430,000 Syrians have been displaced in the year since the official end of the civil war, according to United Nations, driven by ongoing sectarian violence and instability. Also, Israel's military released drone footage. It claims that it shows Hamas operatives staging the recovery of hostage remains. The Times verified that the video depicts a body bag being shown to Red Cross officials, reburied, and later unearthed again. The World Health Organization reported that more than 450 people were massacred at a hospital in Sudanese city recently seized by paramilitary forces. 450 people. In Japan, bears have attacked over 100 people this year, prompting the government to consider deploying troops to prevent further incidents. In Japan, there's troops against bears. Now, senior U.S. envoy Morgan Ortagus urged Lebanon's government to disarm Hezbollah by year's end during her visit to Beirut. The request echoes a commitment Lebanon made in August and comes amid escalating Israeli strikes in Hezbollah targets and southern eastern Lebanon that have killed more than a dozen people, fueling fears of renewed conflict. And this is one of those gazillion conflicts that Trump allegedly solved, right? Meanwhile, Trump repeatedly criticized WTO, World Trade Organization, calling them toothless. But regardless, U.S. just paid more than $25 million in overdue membership fees, according to correspondence obtained by Financial Times. Washington has also quietly resumed technical cooperation with WTO. Now, Brazil's deadly police raid, this is a big one, large-scale police operation in Rio de Janeiro targeting drug trafficking networks left an estimated 132 people dead, including 4 officers. The state public defender's office said the governor defended the raid as a strike against narco-terrorism, while UN human rights officials criticized the operation as excessive and urged Brazil to ensure police actions comply with international use of force standards. And again, as I always mention, right, the circus travels. Whatever now U.S. does in the Pacific and the Caribbean, now this is mimicked elsewhere, presuming and start killing people. As to Paraguay, this is our last news. They announced plans to open a consulate in Western Sahara, aligning with Morocco's claim to the disputed region. The move reverses Paraguay's prior recognition of the separatist Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic and follows talks in Rabat. The United States, France, and United Kingdom also back Morocco's autonomy proposal. So, 1 hour, 17 minutes, a bit overstaying my welcome here, but I can't wait to see you tomorrow again on this Zoom. If you want to check out Onest Plus, please join. This is a join button here on Onest on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, please go and subscribe and share. Please like this thing here so more people will get the factual, actual news recommended in their timeline on YouTube. And please subscribe to our free newsletter. There's no paywall. Monday through Friday, you get your actual news. All the links are in description of this episode on YouTube. And if you are watching on Twitter, then it's in the description or in my profile. There are all the links there as well. Okay, so can't wait to see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. There we're going to discuss the future of NATO based on docs I've seen and my discussion yesterday with Carter and how they are involved. And it's way more than I thought. So we're going to talk about that. Okay, so thank you again for being here. Keep your head on a swivel. Please consume actual news. Have a peaceful evening. And and I see you tomorrow. Thank you for being here.